Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Belgian Football Podcast. My name's Scott Coyne. I'll be your host for this episode, this special episode of the BFP. We have decided to reconvene as we kind of hinted that we might do this, depending on how the World Cup went. So this is a special World Cup deep dive, obviously on the Red Devils and how things are going. We are convening to do this the day after, the night before, for a lot of us, that remarkable 3-2 win over Senegal. And I'm not alone, of course. Our Joris is with me. And Joris, has your heart gone back into your chest yet?
Yeah, a little bit. I guess it's still a bit shaky all day. I didn't need that many coffees. At the same time, I did need a lot of them as well. So that's it has been a difficult balance today. But what have we witnessed there? I still have no words. I have no idea how everything happens. I know we will talk about it a bit in this episode, but spoiler, I don't have many answers, full answers. Anyways, spoiler alert there. But yeah, what just happened? How did we escape that? I have no clue.
Yeah, I don't think anybody does. I suppose the first thing I want to actually ask you is Rudy Garcia actually just a tactical mastermind and we've only just discovered that? Or did we just get really, really lucky in lots of ways? Rudy's post-match press conference was really interesting, I thought, because he didn't really want to talk about the negative aspects of the game from our perspective, and just wanted to talk up the fact that we'd kind of won the game. Two things for me. One, I think he looked as surprised as anybody that we managed to get it over the line, which I thought was kind of quite telling. And secondly, this school of thought that actually, he should be given credit for making bold changes. When I think about this, when you look at the substitutions generally that he makes, they're not particularly bold and they're pretty predictable, and often he makes them reasonably late in games. So he's gone bold with the substitutions in the second half of this game because he doesn't have any choice. They're 20 minutes or so 25 minutes or so from crashing out big time. He's 25 minutes or so from being sacked. What choice has he got? So he throws everything at it, including some things that most of us didn't really understand at the time, and it kind of comes off. And yeah, he was as surprised as anybody. I'm curious to get your thoughts as well. Senegal, I think, and Rooney mentioned this afterwards as well, he said he was pretty confident that they were going to have some form of tactical collapse. And actually, this is where I think he's kind of right. Because if you look at that last half hour or so, Senegal did start to drop a bit deeper and their game management wasn't great. It was clear psychologically they felt like they'd won the game, but kind of couldn't see it out. And obviously that allowed us a bit of an in as well. But I suppose some of the substitutions did make a difference.
Yeah, this is very strange, of course, as well, how that all happened. Kevin De Bruyne and Doku going off when you're trailing 2-0, not in the 90th minute or so, when literally it's over, but really, yeah, whenever there is still a fighting chance, to put in Rasquet for example, like more defensive-minded player for sure. That was kind of weird. I will full disclosure from our group chats. I know you were saying before me even said I said something that that Rudy should be out after. That was still before those changes, I believe, even after the game. I even went further and said, like, well, I hope they go for a world premiere and sack him at a hydration break.
Yeah, I think I said something like sack him in the dressing room afterwards. Yeah, you went, exactly, no,
yeah. Something in that. I was even more, not furious even. I was more like, well, there were not many emotions at that point. It was more like, well, okay, this is over. Nothing is going to change. Of course, these changes it's a bit of kamikaze, of course, to a certain extent. But I just can't get a grip on Garcia and whatever he does, because he also surprised us with that experiment in the friendly games that we touched on, I think, still in the last episode as well. before this one, with Onana as a most central defender in a back 3 or 5, however you want to call it. Yeah, that was a surprise, but in a positive one. At least he's trying things, so at least he's open to experimenting. But during this tournament, he really has not really done that. But at the same time, there's not been outside of yesterday. Ironically, there's not been any same starting lineup yet in any game. So you got no full fixed starting 11, and this is has not changed. So to looking forward already quickly as well, like this hasn't changed. I have even less idea who will play now next, what role will players play. But yeah, bold move from him. Have to also mention, of course, to lean into the Senegal side. They also took Gueye off. One of the Gueyes, of course, Pape Gueye, off around that same time, or maybe it was even the same time around that hydration break, right before I think both of those changing sequences might have happened. And that also played a role as well, maybe in field. Whether that maybe, yeah, he already said that he doesn't want to play anymore under the current Senegal staff, so he clearly wanted to play further on. So that might have been a misjudgment as well. So I mean, the stars were aligning on all sides clearly to set something up, but nonetheless, even after those changes, yes, of course. This is just a natural thing, of course, also a bit that Senegal would lean back a bit more and that Belgium would come. But there was, for most part, and for the longest possible time, almost no real danger or threat from Belgium. Despite that, maybe they got a bit more grip on the game, yes, but not really getting much out of it. A few Lukaku had a shot from distance, one of his specialties, of course. But apart from that, I don't remember that much. In Senegal, still had their own chances as well. Courtois held one for 3-0 that was offside, was called offside in the end, but there that didn't really look like that was actually offside. So it was a needed save, and ultimately that is maybe the most crucial moment in the game, even that he prevented that, because yeah, coming back from 2 goals, it doesn't happen often, but it happens with Belgium. That's what we now twice in the last 8 years have seen, and no other nation has in the last 56 years at the World Cup stage. So that's in a knockout phase. So that on its own is still something, but I can't say that I still believed in it. And Garcia, yeah, I don't know. There's always said about Hitez that he had like he had a lucky charm, I guess, like or it's like he had the lucky charm somewhere because they got lucky, and then because of that also went far in '86, namely as well. They there are some similarities with that tournament in the group stages. They were, which we might touch on a little bit as well in this episode later on. They
it's
were.
Really, it's really interesting. Just you talking about luck in this in relation to Garcia. Some people might have missed this, but there was a really wonderful moment a couple of days ago in his pre-match press conference before the Senegal game, where he was talking to journalists, and he stopped the press conference quite dramatically in the middle of it because he spotted what some people will call a ladybug. Some people call it a lady bird, depending on where you are, on one of the journalist's phones on his table. And he said, sorry, gentlemen, we have to stop and observe this ladybug for a moment. And he picked it up in his index finger and told the journalists about how they're actually good luck. So he then got up, left the press room, went out of the hotel in the press room and put it down in the grass outside the hotel, came back and carried on the press conference. So that moment in the context of how wild this game was last night, take that how you will. It takes on a completely new light. I just hope they haven't used up all of their luck. Um,
Are we getting very spiritual here now, Scott?
well, maybe just a little bit, but I'm kind of glad I got a chance to circle back to that story because I particularly enjoyed that moment a couple of days ago, and I just think it puts a whole new spin in the game. While we're still on the subject of luck generally, we should probably touch just briefly as well on the group stages, which are in the recesses of our mind now. But 5 points. We win the group unexpectedly in the end. We went into it thinking we were going to win it, and that was the expectation. Didn't look like we were going to. Insipid performances. 1-1 draw against Egypt. Which got everybody's backs up a bit. It then got a bit worse. A 0-0 draw against Iran. Where actually, when you look at things now, with a little bit of hindsight, it wasn't an awful performance. They just didn't score. You then have a romping 5-1 win against New Zealand, which doesn't really tell us anything. No disrespect to New Zealand, but it is New Zealand, so that was kind of expected. And we win the group because obviously Egypt couldn't dispose of Iran, which led to the harder game in the 32 against Senegal, which was just wild.
Yeah, it is wild, and okay, I didn't even think about it, but actually, yeah, okay, I did think about it, that it was very lucky that we still won that group, but it had been at the back of my mind today already as well. I thought we had all the luck yesterday, but before that, I didn't really think about it before that anyway. Nobody in Belgium does want to do that still, I guess. The group stages were terrible, but ultimately, I guess the end result was what we wanted, regardless of how it was achieved, which was not in a good way, clearly. And then yesterday the tournament was supposed to start, and it didn't start until the 85th minute, I guess. So we could say we were literally maybe 10 minutes, given this hydration break system and so on, away from like a very dramatic, terribly bad tournament. And somehow things changed. Things started to roll. Some luck as well in the game. Things going the right way. But circling back to your for earlier question as well, of course, for the changes as well. There's so many extra questions. Like I alluded to that already for like the next game. And from the past as well. Why didn't Moreira feature, for example? He had a great, even despite the potentially still costing us the win moment in the final minutes where he missed decided to go for a tricky ball to go for the 4-2, but didn't get through the Senegalese defender instead of keeping the ball in their own ranks and just playing out. But despite that, he had such an impact. Even if, Ben also said that in our chat. He is very raw, but he brings that energy, the thing that Belgium is really lacking. And the games in the group stages were not going so well, so you could have tried that. Okay, other players featured as well. Salamaker's got ahead of that before, and he seems, despite his goal, since not featuring yesterday, to have maybe moved back a little, at least for last night's game, then back in the pecking order. But nonetheless, there were with the many changes that are possible now in the game, you would have expected Moreira to maybe feature a bit more. There's also still a few other things that are quite inexplicable. Nothing against Charles de Ketelaar. He's actually doing his best, and not all the performances have been terrible, but the problem is, even in those performances, yesterday he really was not great. That's also why he got subbed off already at halftime as well. But even when he was okay, he's just not a striker. He's not suited to that position, and that's quite strange. That's still the choice. That Lukaku doesn't start fully. Agree, fully normal, I believe. Also very defendable, as we saw last night as well. Specifically, of course, he still played almost 90 minutes eventually because of how the game was set up. But he can have an impact from the bench, really, and that is fine. But like, not that much experimenting. They're also coming back to what you said in the beginning already yourself. At some point, Garcia seems to be wanting to experiment. At other points, not. Then he does the most ludicrous things from the outside. I mean, bringing on Meunier for for crying out loud. Like, I think the whole of Belgium literally was having a facepalm moment at that time, and well, who gives the assist yet again to that's already his second assist. Okay, I'm not sure if he did get the assist for that goal against Egypt, because that was an own goal. I don't know if that's counted, but at least he was involved in another goal, despite the rest of his playing time minutes not being great. Okay, yesterday actually nothing to remark on that either, nothing too much, but the rest of the games he has just been poor, and yeah, that's ludicrous how things happen. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm making it a bit of a word salad, as they would say here in German as well.
No,
It's all a mixture of feelings and thoughts. Coming back to your questions and
yeah, I think it's
here and there.
you touched on some really interesting points there, and actually things that I wanted to kind of ask you about. You know, you mentioned Diego Moreira. When he came on, he did look pretty good. He looked like everything that had kind of been missing from most of the players. To be honest, you know, there was energy, there was intent, there was, at least he was trying things. You know, in a way that most people kind of hadn't been. And obviously, it's difficult not to respond to that positively. I suppose it poses the question: has he done enough to give Garcia a bit of a headache now? You know, has Moreira given himself a real strong argument to start against the United States in the round of 16? I think he has, because of what he brought. The question obviously is, okay, who does he start ahead of if that's the case? You know, on the right, Trossard normally starts there. Trossard and Doku we know can switch, but Jeremy Doku has been pretty poor. In truth, you know, for somebody who, you know, coming into the tournament, we thought, okay, there's a real bright light there. This is his moment to really go and do what we've all been waiting for him to do on a stage like that. And it just hasn't happened for combination of reasons. Obviously, there's been plenty of distractions around him in particular as well. He's been a little bit unwell. Then he's become a dad for the first time. He leaves the camp for a few days. He comes back. You know, he's missed training. It's all been a bit disjointed. So I suppose if Moreira does start, and I don't think he will, I really don't think he will, but he has given Garcia a really kind of strong dilemma there. Surely he has to start ahead of Doku, because Trossard's been, you know, the better of the two out wide for me anyway so far. And you mentioned Big Rom. I mean, we know he's not 100% fit, but there's just, yeah, everyone knows about that kind of talismanic effect, and you said it, he really is something. I mean, for somebody who is nowhere near match fit, he's, well, depending on what stats body you are, he's certainly got 2 goals and 1 assist. Some people are crediting him with the third one as well, which officially went down as an own goal. I mean, you know, he's having an impact at this tournament, you know, big time. I thought it was really interesting to see him talking afterwards about the penalty. You know, he gave it to Tielemans and he said to him, look, you take it. I'm not 100% mentally there. And I thought that's the mark of a genuine leader, you know. That he was able to kind of do that, I think, because, you know, I was thinking who's got the balls here, and he, you know, Big Rom was the obvious choice. He normally would be, but number 2 Tielemans, you know, obviously fitter, and yeah, I thought that was a big moment and a big choice for him. But yeah, the general team selection which you were talking about has also been a thing, because, you know, there are certain players obviously in this side that are kind of untouchable. I'd maybe describe it a bit like that. It's almost impossible not to start them in a game because of who they are, because of the fear of what might happen. But when we look at the performances in the tournament so far, there aren't a lot of arguments to start, you know, some of these untouchable players. And when you see the impact that some of the players who came off the bench had to varying degrees, it does pose questions. And you said right at the beginning, it's impossible to predict now who's going to start against the United States because of how he's stuck to his guns, Garcia, and in some cases kind of ignored the evidence. But he's made big play, hasn't he, in his press conferences about the strength of this side. Is the whole squad. It's the quality and depth, which is a kind of polite way of defending all of his players without criticising anybody or having to take the flak for anything. We should as well touch on the big midfield debate, which has been going on even before the tournament, but it's just kind of ramped up. There is a cult of Van Aken, as I call it. You know, Hans Van Aken. We all know Hans is a great player, but he has a big support body in certain sections of the media that have been pushing hard to get him in there. He's come in. Yeah, they offer different things. Does Hans Van Aken start? Does Amadou Onana start? Does Raskin start? All of those things. So many choices there. So many things for Rudy Garcia to kind of ponder. And it's probably been the biggest headache point for Belgium, I think. That midfield selection. Everything else at the moment is kind of looked after itself in various ways. But yeah, what do we think of the midfield?
Yeah, clearly I'm not the only one that's having still having a lot of. He's still a bit railed on, I guess, from last night. There were a lot of questions in that whole speech. Jumping on Moreira, yeah, there's always this question that I think the Moreira in the team selection in general, maybe there's also a point to make. Like this energy that he brings could also be really valuable as a sub, of course. So, and but the problem, well, not the positive problem. I guess he doesn't won't have a headache about it, Garcia, but more like happy to see that he indeed has more tools in his toolbox, more than one tool in his toolbox. Yeah, that seemed that could work. But that he at least should get some more game time. I think that seems to be clear. That he just indeed brings that energy. And okay, you could also say like start him, and actually any opponent will be terrified if the Doku only comes on and as a sub as well, or anyone else of the selection. So that you can play a bit with that a bit as well, especially with the amount of games so far that already have gone to extra time as well. Like, yeah, if you both play an hour or an hour, yeah, that then it in an hour and half an hour in case it is in the end 90 minutes game. Well, 96 7 minutes, but still, that's still quite a lot of time just because of all these breaks as well, of course. So yeah, big question marks about that's selection there. I do agree. Trossard actually has been the best one in attacking front far from the starters at least. You could also argue that Lukaku is. You also alluded to like yeah, just touching. I mean, he's just a force of nature somehow. Like even if like until his goal, he was not very involved either in the game or anything. But yeah, you know what he does, and that's exactly that's for the national squad. He does more than that, of course. But even apparently when he's not very fit yet, he does yeah, still score his goals. He doesn't need much. He has that striker's instinct that the Ketelaar misses. Like I've heard somewhere else today that the Ketelaar actually only has one shot on goal this tournament so far. So after 3 games starting in a squad like Belgium, even though it's not the squad as it used to be, that is telling. Also yesterday there was a early on in the game there was a clear chance that he created for himself to shoot, but then for some reason he hesitated to do so, and ultimately, yeah, they had to build on. They did manage to get a shot away from that attack, but not as big a chance as it would have been that if he would have tried his luck to stay in that team again as well that time. But yeah, like that's really and yeah. And back to Lukaku as well in the penalty situation. Yeah, imagine any other of the big stars in the tournament having that chance of moments that's yeah, it's very. And I mean maybe also Lukaku in the past would have done differently, but yeah, that is really yeah, who would have given the ball away there from any of the main protagonists in other strikes, in strikers specifically as well, maybe in other nations, in other teams here as well. Like that was a really big gesture, and just also like touching on that moment, it's the way Tielemans put that away. That's just very very cold blooded. Yeah, that's showing yeah, a lot of coolness and calm because as I was telling you to you, I'll circle back to the other questions soon as well. Staying in that moment, just like right before that, when Lukovac hit the bar with his shot, I was all bit, I was, and we were not certain that there would be a penalty following. as well. I was like, why do you try to shoot the ball always top win? It doesn't need to be top win, just hard and low, or even soft and low could be enough. But just low is often good enough as well. It doesn't always have to be the top win. Dori Lukaku specifically talking to you, but the problem is, in a sense as well, he never misses far, so he's always close to getting it, and sometimes it happens. And I mean, let's hope he still has that in him. That one goal, I don't care if it's like that, or if it's indeed a low shot, or like he stumbles one in over the line with his knee or whatever. But he does deserve a goal, basically, based on the last few performances he had. He didn't feature that much, but he has always created he at least his own chances in those games. But but like I said, I've said like hard and low, and I thought the same for the penalty itself as well. Please just hard and low to minimize the risk. But no, he decides to actually, well, almost go for top in there, and no chance for the goalkeeper. That was very very cold blooded from Tielemans. And now finally to your question around the further question about the midfield. Well, Tielemans is of course a midfielder, and to be fair, ultimately, of course, he was man of the match because of the two goals he scored, and the involvement he had as well in the last starting from that first goal, I guess, that Belgium scores for 85th minute, last half an hour, 40 minutes ultimately. Wow, that game was so long in the end. Incredible. That's another random thought that's sprung into mind. But yeah, he didn't have a great game until that point, so that's worrying a bit. But on the other hand, De Bruyne also has not really been shining this tournament. He's not for a lack of trying, so that we have to give him that. Definitely trying a lot. Also scored against New Zealand, so that was good for everyone, I guess, as well. Everyone's confidence there that he did that. But he also had a lot of bad shots already in positions that he would not expect to see him shoot so badly. Maybe not necessarily score, but at least get closer, or hit the targets at least. But yeah, these are some of the hanging questions. Of course, what do you do with that? Raskin has actually been, to be honest, great this tournament, especially yesterday. I mean, we expect less of him, of course, as well, but he talking about earlier about the energy that Moreira brings. Yeah, in a different position, Raskin also brings that. Something you lack when you have the midfield from the last two games, starting namely Tielemans, De Bruyne, and Van Aken, who had his chance, hasn't really taken it. I would say Van Aken, every that was also something that literally everyone seemed outside of us really wanted to see happening. Okay, not against New Zealand or against in the group stages. Actually, that fair enough. Also, just in general, against the slightly smaller sides, but putting him in and the other two, of course, as well, which then would be combined a bit too attacking, maybe to for most to play against most decent to really good qualitative sides, which hasn't been disproven so far. I would say that game yesterday, whole midfield was not great, of course, but the Bruyne then went off. Benake couldn't make an impact. Like he did manage to have some impact in the game against New Zealand when he started, but against Iran, his substitution is coming on. It was not the easiest task because many might argue as well. Of course, not soon after he got on the red card for Ngoy game, so were not the easiest of circumstances. But it did look a bit off the pace nonetheless during that. With few bad passes, which are unusual, not characteristic for him. But there's a lot of things to be said. I wonder whether I doubt that he will keep his place, to be honest, as well. But I don't know if there will be more changes in midfield. It's more like will there be one? And if there is one, it still could also be. You could argue that maybe De Bruyne might, despite being still the main man in this team, maybe on paper, he might be sacrificed. And like similar story as with Doku and Moreira or anyone else from the wings. Yeah, that there could be yeah, many sides will be more scared of De Bruyne coming in fresh, which at this age maybe is not so bad, coming on off fresh against a bit more fatigued opponents. Especially as well, like that. Also, that duo could be like really well performing. It, but of course, they also can be from the start, and they will be expecting themselves. So that's more also a man management, people management thing. But yeah, that so many extra questions, but positive questions, I'd say as well, given the things that already have been tried yesterday, given how it turned out. Also, I mean, even not that they will be very happy about it, but both Broco and De Bruyne, I don't think they both will be sidelined. I expect them both still on the starting 11. But if that's not the case, you can always refer back to this game. Like this turned around after they went off, and you can also make the difference, and like you can spin it positively, and all this kind of people management that might be needed. Okay, that was not that much yet on the midfield question, I guess, except Van Aken, maybe Raskin doing well, so that I think he might have a fighting chance to also really be in the starting 11 again. We know he's in general been a favorite of Garcia as well, and has performed usually quite well as well. And then yeah, maybe like I said, he brings something else. It's not even like maybe his level is not assessed. He just brings something different. That's well, the bit of the beauty of this squad, I guess. There's so many different profiles. I feel like they have been underused so far, but yesterday we did see that for the first time. Really, like this can indeed maybe shake up opponents, shake up yourself as well, of course. So that's we all had those emotions as well. But yeah, that there's so many options. And then there's of course also the question of Onana, who started still in the tournament, but had yeah really bad performance against Egypt to start with. Then he only came on, I believe, against Iran, and then that was also not a good. Those were not also no good minutes from him. But I think I'm not sure. Remember if he featured against New Zealand, but not in the starting 11 at least. Yesterday he only had like a cameo role at the end, but that were his best 10 minutes of the tournament so far, 10 or 15, however much they were in the end, which was also still a bit of a surprising change a little bit, taking off one of the Trossard, who is one of them. You would expect to be one of the penalty takers if it would have gone to that. But he was, of course, he had already given some signs of cramps, and was rough handled a few times already before as well. So that he would go off maybe, but that Onana would come on, yeah, so close to the penalties that I don't trust him to take a penalty. Maybe, I mean, you surprise me. Please do that in the final, for example. I don't, but if we ever get there, not getting ahead of ourselves, but yeah, just yeah, he had really good minutes. He was involved at that in the attack leading up to that penalty, and he had some more interventions and interceptions as well, crucial ones to keep Senegal out of further away from the Belgian backline in the even later stages of the extra time of the extra time. I guess I even at that point, but yeah, if he can keep up performing like that, then of course he also has a shout. I don't think he will start, but maybe as a shout to have a bit more minutes again. Also, depending on how the game is going, of course. And yeah, I would also not be fully surprised if both Raskin and Onana would be playing at the same time as well. They to not even in a defensively, but indeed more like in a it would effectively be a bit more defensive in that midfield if those two play. I'm not even gonna guess who would go to the bench in that case either way, but that could bring something else. The energy, hopefully, yeah. It's of course also I believe they both started. in the first game against Egypt, or did Raskin only come on off the bench? Um, I'm already completely derailed, to be honest, about these games. I forget I want to forget them as well, but um,
Yeah,
but
I think
there have been some minutes, I think, that they were together on the pitch, or maybe it was not the case. But anyways, yeah, but that might be worth testing against certain opponents, and the US might be one, to allude to that as well. Maybe before we move to that, I know you're the host, but I propose to also touch quickly on maybe another. There have been a few key moments, but a very key moment, maybe in hindsight at least, where I think everyone thought, especially, I mean, the Flemish commentator Philip Joris was giving it up at that point. Like, okay, now that's it. Now you can really forget about it. The fight between the verbal, luckily, but it almost got further than that. But the verbal fight between Trossard and Tielemans after, a bad cross from Tielemans, where maybe there would have been better options, among which Trossard, who was then angry. Yeah, it's not even about who was right or wrong in that case. There is no good answer there anyway, I guess. But more like, yeah, how that escalated things right before the hydration break, and then somehow, I mean, ultimately Trossard gave the assist for the 2-2, the equalizer, crucial equalizer, to get us to that extra time, and everything. The scenario couldn't have been written better in that sense. Of course, also helped. I have to say that. As well, by a bit of a howler from the Senegal goalkeeper there, who helps Belgium for sure. We not getting that ball, repaying the favor Courtois had done in the first half as well, I guess. But luckily for Belgium, they did not manage to score out of that. But yeah, really tough questions there to ask. I don't see a midfield Van Aken, Onana, and Raskin, but apart from that, I see a lot of combinations that are possible to give a very indecisive and inconclusive answer, and maybe disappointing as well.
so many questions. Rudy's left us with so many questions. I'm sure he knows the answers. You know, he's the only one. He holds these cards close to his chest. But yeah, I mean, it's been such an interesting debate this throughout the whole tournament. Actually, kind of, you know, the midfield selections. Interestingly, for those of you who haven't spotted already, lots of you will have done. Yuri Tielemans' penalty winner, late penalty winner, latest match-winning goal in World Cup history as well. So an interesting stat. We'll see how long that stands in the age of VAR, but interesting in itself. But the main thing is, miraculous game, unbelievable. We're through. We're through to the round of 16, where we will play, spoiler alert, Mauricio Pochettino's United States side. There is a bit of history here. We've played each other, I think, 7 times, mostly in friendlies. First time we met was way back in 1930, the very first World Cup. The United States beat Belgium 3-0 in what was also the first World Cup fixture for both these countries as well. So some interesting numbers in there. And of course, back in 2014, Belgium won 2-1 in extra time in Brazil. And then most recently, just at the end of March, obviously we played the United States in Atlanta, winning 5-2. Not that we can tell too much from that game, you know, these sort of meaningless fitness test, tactical exploratory friendlies. But yeah, there's a bit of history there. And one thing we're going to have to do if we're going to win this game, Joris, is play with a much better tempo. Cannot afford to start this game anywhere like as flat as the other games, because one thing the United States have done in the tournament so far is start hard and fast.
Yeah, and they kind of did that as well in that friendly last March as well. Of course, they lost it eventually with big numbers, but that game in the second half, in the first half, they took the lead, and that was not undeserved. I have to admit, I didn't watch that friendly, but based on some highlights and that I saw in what I heard from the press, so it's second hand mainly, but yeah, that they didn't play poorly at all, despite what the scoreline might suggest. But yeah, there's also, it's difficult to compare even those games, because at both sides there were players missing that are there now, and the other way around, like some key players even as well. So that's difficult to go on about. Of course, a World Cup on its own is going to be different. Facing a home nation, I think that's the first time actually ever that Belgium does that as well on the World Cup in Seattle, which to a certain extent is an especially since they now had this extra time, these 30 extra minutes, an advantage that they don't need to have this extra traveling time to Seattle. On the other hand, also in that stadium, the atmosphere can get a lot more electric than it can be in Atlanta. So yeah, and of course, in a not in a neutral game, that is still that's quite fine. Even though I think even now I heard a lot of chants for Senegal as well. But yeah, against the US, that's of course going to be an electric atmosphere. I'm quite certain about that. So they will have to handle that. It's really, even if you would argue, could still argue that the US is not the biggest opponent that you could face quality wise. Yeah, and that's with all respect to their qualities, of course. But you're now in the last 16. There are already some big teams out as well. Even but that they are not a Spain or Portugal just yet. That would probably be the one of the opponents for the winner of this tie as well. To look ahead a little more, but despite that, there are no mugs, and yeah, with they have shown a different phase this tournament as well, of course, than we expected them. Even more, yeah, even more, like you say, very energized. Mere what they might lack in certain aspects of quality, they make up for it a lot with intensity and then energy, which if you play this smart, but okay, you can't really plan that, but you can hope for it, and okay, you can think about it. Of course, could also work in their disadvantage, of course, as well. Especially with Belgium having a few really decent, fast-paced players that can play on the wings and in attack up front. That could leave them exposed. But after yesterday's game, I mean, it might sound weird, maybe, but even it's not a the good tournament yet, but like I've seen enough in this tournament from Belgium. Like I've had my entertainment. So even if it would go wrong, I'll not be super disappointed. I don't think Garcia necessarily deserves a contract extension or anything. I don't even know how to rate his performance still. But we've seen something, and that's also something that's I know we both relatively often get this question about the failed golden generation, or in other terms, that this group of players not winning at lifting a trophy, and we're so fed up with it. But like, yeah, I mean, they've given us games for at least for Belgium, and in some cases for international history in the World Cup. But it's still a game of entertainment, and of course you hope you win. But yeah, this is what you do it for. Like, the whole nation was like so jubilant yesterday and today. I mean, it was yeah. Obviously, I'm not in Georgia myself, but it was the topic on number one, the only topic, I guess, even in Belgium currently, like in for a good reason, instead of, yeah, that's what football does with you. But like, that's what you do it for. That's maybe something many people forget at times. Sorry, that's a small rant from my side here. Well, a rant, or it's a statement. I don't know, but like, I mean, they may not have won this the trophy, but one, it's not the same group, by the way, as well anymore. In a few important players still, of course, so I can get why people still assume that, but there's a lot of yeah, turnover now of players by now, but they also still achieved the best result ever from Belgium, the best football Belgium ever produced on a World Cup. Should have shown it more often, yeah, I'm sure, yes, but there's a few games they just can't take away from us, and that we'll look back to for the ages. Some games for the ages for Belgium, at least, and okay, internationally probably less, but there might be some still nonetheless, especially from in Russia. This game against Senegal, that might depend a bit more on future events as well, both in this tournament and later on. Or from other side, both from Belgium and from other sides in this tournament and later on. But yeah, just like I know many people actually are calling the US favorites now. would not even completely disagree with that. I would still call it more like a 50-50 maybe. But yeah, it really depends on Belgium, I think, as well, like how they show up. If they can match or get close to this intensity that they brought in the last minutes and then the extra time of the game against Senegal, and of what the US is bringing, or can punish the US when because I'm also feeling like, indeed, like I mentioned, there are chances that the US might be a bit too enthusiastic and might get caught on the break, on the counter as well. If they take their moments in that and don't concede as many, well, do we concede? Yes, I would already argue we unfortunately are not so great this tournament yet in keeping the clean sheets, even though it already happened. So that's already better than my the country, my country of residence has had. So Germany has had since they won the cup in 2014. They haven't had any clean sheets against often very small opponents as well. But yeah, this tournament is not really happening so much. Hopefully, it will happen as well. Hopefully, Courtois can get a clean sheet record. He's only two behind who are at Shilton and one other that I've now forgot. But he has someone else who has 10 clean sheets on the World Cups, and Courtois is at 8 now. Yeah, hopefully he still can catch that record. Of course, that would be a really good sign. But if not, yeah, let's see how this game turns out. I'm not sure if this was much of a prediction or anything. To be honest, it does help. It has to be mentioned, of course, Balogun, the US player that has been bagging the goals and has been performing well this tournament so far, is suspended for this game effectively. So that's yeah, I always like to face opponents at full strength to a certain extent, but of course I'm not going to cry over the fact that he is not there though. But you can only play the ones that I'm sure is the Pepe or who else who will replace him will definitely also have will be seeing a chance to make an impact now as well, and then to make it more difficult on Pochettino, who is, of course, I mean, is of course a big strength of them. Pochettino is obviously an internationally renowned manager as well, who has shaken things up a little bit at the US. It clearly already, but I'm also sure they will be disappointed if they would lose against the current Belgium, at least not the Belgium of 2014. That was, by the way, also already quite an epic game in a tournament where Belgium really didn't get that far, but that was already a very brilliant game as well in hindsight. But yeah, hopefully no Tim Howard or replacements because he had at that time, and I think still stands the most saves in a single game. But that was, of course, I think the Cape Verdean goalkeeper broke that record for the 90 minutes games, but Tim Howard had, of course, in extra time a lot of saves as well. Hopefully, nothing similar like that this time. Even though the result might be the same it would be nice to be the same. Of course, that would have been a 2-1 win for Belgium in that case. But yeah, 50-50 really, and yeah, facing it's just exciting. Like by now I'm just excited. Even yesterday, I know we both were quite excited but to bring it back a little, like we both were relatively excited about Belgium playing Senegal. I think for 85 minutes we did not really think that that we should have been so excited. Anyway was sitting on the fence if I really no, I didn't want that kind of opponent yet at this stage of the tournament. But that the tournament really started now is clear, and they did not do well, but still squeeze through. And in a dramatic fashion. What more do you need? Of course, hopefully they play better. Of course, when I do think this could be a really brilliant fixture. Unfortunately, it's at a very annoying time at night in our neck of the woods, both our neck of the woods. But yes, that's something else. And I was rambling for a long time. What are your thoughts, Scott, on this game?
Yeah, well, it's a really interesting one because I think Belgium have faced sides up till now who, to varying degrees, have played varying degrees of a low block against them, mid and low blocks. Senegal weren't quite so. They were much more offensive, an opposition to play. I think United States, I think we're in for a very open game. They're not going to play a low block against Belgium, I don't think. So there could potentially be a lot of goals in this game, and it could be very open. Midfield is always very important in knockout football, which is why the context of, who's going to start, what choices does Rudy Garcia make become more important than ever now. But one thing's for sure, it's been quite a ride so far, and the ride is going to go on at least until the last 16, and who knows beyond that. So that just about brings our World Cup special, our little digest, brings you up to date. We did say at the beginning that we were going to think about doing something like this should something interesting happen, and lots of interesting things have happened. Some of them negative things, some of them positive, but we're at a kind of delicate and interesting point now. So the game against the United States is in the early hours of Tuesday morning for a lot of us. So we look forward to a sleepless night. Good luck to the Red Devils. Thank you for joining me, Joris.
Yes, thank you. It's been for putting this episode together with me on short notice. We'll see if we do it again. Indeed, both in positive and negative scenario. I guess it's still possible as well. We'll have to see how our schedules match. I guess as well. But it's been a wild ride, and we failed to mention that because I kind of wanted to highlight that we both, I think, wanted to highlight that a bit, the surrealistic element of the game yesterday. That started with the away shirts finally featuring for Belgium in the World Cup. You hate them or love them, but at least the homage to Magritte, the surrealist painter, of course. There were no more fitting shirts and Omen maybe yesterday than to play in those shirts. That crazy surrealistic, and that's. Let's see how it continues like this. Also, a lot of things have been very surreal. Actually, the whole Ladybug story on its own is quite surreal as well.
That's true. That's why I loved having the opportunity to bring that one back up. Yeah, a surreal shirt for what turned out to be an absolutely surreal game, no doubt about it.
A lot of things for storytellers, for sure. There's a lot of storytelling going on. But okay, I'll leave you and I'll let you get to your outro here.
Yeah. So if you like what we're doing here at the BFP, you can of course leave us a little review on your podcast platform of choice. We're very appreciative of that because, as you know, that helps people find new listeners and English language coverage of Belgian football. And if you really like us, you can leave a little donation at our Buy Me a Coffee account, which goes a small way to meeting some of the BFP's production costs. We'll be back with you very soon for another episode, and that includes our bumper pre-season preview, which will be around before we know it. With this World Cup bridging the gap between the end of last season and the start of the next season. And obviously when the World Cup does finish, with Belgium winning it, of course, then we will continue to kind of ramp up our Pro League coverage for you as well. So take care of yourselves, everybody, and we will speak to you very, very soon on another episode of the Belgian Football Podcast.